morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. It's our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST. Every day of the week where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the Bitcoin conference market. A lot of big historical news coming out of the conference. Admittedly, just words at the moment, but we want to figure out what those words were and get everyone's thoughts on what happened over the weekend. Pretty historical stuff. As always, I'm your host, B-Check. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Bread. And before we get into everything, as usual, just a reminder that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is incredibly risky, very, very volatile, and we don't know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Bread, it's Monday. It's the 29th of July. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Hey, buddy. Reporting in from the sunny state of Florida, one of two sunny states that we have. I'm down here, we're soaking up some sun. I'm coming back tonight, but I couldn't miss my chance to contribute to the modern market. So it's been a good weekend. It's just a lot of sun for me, kind of away from the screens, but I'm catching the news. Like the NEIRO shit is obviously been going crazy. I lost a bet on Polymarket, so that was good about the Bitcoin conference. I thought Trump would say MOG. That didn't work out. Yeah, but it's been a good weekend.
Good stuff. How's it been? We're going to get into the Bitcoin conference, obviously, in just a little bit. That's probably going to be the main segment of today's show. All kinds of interesting details coming out there, so we will get into that, as well as want to find out what bets you are losing. That's always going to be an entertaining story. But how's it been? Taking a bit of time out. I feel like a lot of people are kind of, is this like the strategic timeout before September and we resume up only?
As I'm probably most people can relate, I was kicked dragging and screaming away from the screens. But yeah, like, it was just something planned. The girl's family was down here, so she had it go. I was like, okay, I'll just go. Like I need to get away. I need to go do whatever. And I preached getting away from the screens. I thought it was good to practice it a little bit. So yeah, just enjoying my time.
I like it. I did a little bit of similar activities this weekend as well. Interestingly, one of the places I went to had a no phone call policy, like no computers and no phone call policy. And so it's actually quite refreshing. Like, how if you go to a cafe these days, or if you go to any type of place, like someone's always like got the laptop out, clicking around, someone's on a call, someone's got their headphones in, like really dialed into something. And you actually are kind of desensitized to the type of atmosphere that creates. Whereas if no one is doing that, I don't know, it felt a little bit more relaxing. I don't know if you've ever like specifically experienced
I haven't specifically gone to one, although I've thought about trying to find an unplugged restaurant, like where you have to drop off your phone or whatever at the door and go in. I know they got to exist now because it's so prevalent. And I was thinking about looking one up just to see what it'd be like.
I mean, one of my friends once came up with a business idea of, instead of it being a cafe, like you just go somewhere where you give your phone into a locker, but then you just sit in the room. It's like, it sounds like prison, to be honest. Like if that was the only part of the business, like, oh, you go somewhere, you drop your phone off, and then you just sit. But that was it. That was the end of the business plan from him. He thought that would be a good business.
It's getting so extreme. Like I wouldn't be surprised if there was a thing like that. I actually saw a video about a guy in Japan called it. He's a do nothing man. He literally, you pay him by the hour to literally just like exist next to you, and like
I've heard this guy
go to dinner. Yeah,
business, right?
Yeah, he does not talk. He does not do anything, and he doesn't speak unless spoken to. He does not pay for anything. He doesn't do anything. He just like hangs out with you, and it's for people to like go to dinner in nice places that don't want to be alone, and like shit like that. So it's I wouldn't be surprised, man.
This is it. This is what the modern market is. We're always looking for different entrepreneurial ways for us to get ahead. So I'm actually happy for anyone to take any of those ideas.
The dystopian market is what we're going to have to rebrand to.
Which market?
The dystopian market. That's where we're starting to get into with all the technology shit.
Yeah, that is part of the future modern market. So look, as I said, we're going to get into all of the big headlines, a lot of important things to discuss. But before we do that, let's get into the snapshot. And we've got some interesting discussion points on some of the meme coin drama over the weekend. But let's get into it, starting with the price action. As always, we're live on X, we're live on YouTube as well. So I'm going to share the screen for the people who are watching in. In terms of price action, we have Bitcoin up 3% in the last 24 hours, up to 69.7K, knocking on $70,000 door. Got Solana up 3% also, up to $190. ETH up 4%, outperforming everything else, finally, at almost 3.4K. In terms of the headlines and other news, we have, as I said, Bitcoin approaching 70K and Sol surging to 190. Number 2, Trump commits to fire Gary Gensler on day 1 and will start the strategic national stockpile of Bitcoin by not selling the US government Bitcoin. Those are 2 of the main things I took from the speech. I watched it live. Here's a few other bullet points, and then we've got some more bullet points coming in a bit. Number 1, Donald Trump says Bitcoin will most likely surpass the market cap of gold in the future. He also said he will fire US SEC Chairman Gensler on day 1. And then he committed to immediately shutting down Operation Choke Point 2.0, creating a Bitcoin and crypto presidential advisory council. In 100 days, he said there would be fair rules written by people who want crypto to thrive. He also said the US government has violated the cardinal rule to never sell your Bitcoin. He will stop the US government from selling its Bitcoin. This will serve as the core of the strategic national Bitcoin stockpile. So he didn't say he was going to go and start buying a load, which is what I think people were hoping, but the kind of creation of the beginning of a national stockpile. So that is very interesting. We're going to discuss that in a lot more detail in just a little bit and get into more details of the speech. On top of that, Loomis proposes a bill to buy 5% of the Bitcoin supply. That's a sitting senator, I believe. We're going to get into the details of what was proposed. And then finally, on the meme coin side, NEIRO coins do $1 billion in volume on one weekend day as same name coins compete for supremacy. This is the name of the new dog of the original Doge owner. And instead of just making one coin and everyone sending it to a billion happily, after one of the coins started to run, there was a copycat coin and there was another one. So all the liquidity has been fractionalized and split between a bunch of places. And so much so that the owner of the original Doge came out to say, I see many tokens related to Kabosu and NEIRO. To clarify, I do not endorse any crypto project except own the Doge and Dog because they own the original Doge photo and IP, which I gave to them, and are committed to doing only good everyday charitable works and Doge culture. So that's a shame, but still people are trading a bunch of these coins. So we're going to get into some of that in just a little bit. In terms of some notable sales, CryptoPunks keep sliding, actually. There's a few now in the 24 something ETH region. One notable sale, this Nerd Glasses one selling for 28.75. That was quite nice. Milady Alien selling for 11.46, and the Rafik Anadol Winds of Yawanawa selling for 9.5 ETH. That is the headlines from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Got some notable sales there too. In terms of the NFT market, it looks like things are down in general. Actually, we can see, I would say, Pudgy Penguins are down 3%, Bored Apes are down 1%, Miladies are down almost 4%, Mutant Apes down 4%. There's a lot of red on the timeline today. But before we get into a bigger discussion on that and more, Brad, what's catching your attention in the market at the moment?
I'm still hooked on the prediction market shit. I had a lot of projects reach out to me about that, so I'm still talking to them about kind of what's going to come. A lot of cool stuff. So I think I'm spending time on Polymarket. I'm seeing other teams innovate on what Polymarket is doing. So trying to like really see what's going on there. I got a notification this morning that Swell's airdrop actually is like finally like here close. I positioned pretty hard for that whenever we were doing the Eigenlayer LRT farming stuff. So that should be a nice little stipend for me. And just TLDR on that is like, we're going to know in August the specific date, but they're talking about 8% of the supply comes at TGE, which again, sometime in August, presumably. And then they're going to do 1% of the supply in these coming wave drops beyond that, where they have mechanisms for rewarding what royalty or loyalty, sorry, not royalties, loyalty throughout that duration. So, yeah, I'm honestly just kind of sitting back and watching the market as opposed to like actively positioning and stuff. But those two are big ones for me.
Nice. Okay, so let's actually take both of those things, because I think we haven't really spoken about one of them in a while, and then also want to double down on your prediction market stuff. The Swell airdrop, we've been speaking about it a lot. I think both of us, I mean, you positioned yourself before me, I think, as well, and then I was also in there quite a lot. I kind of lost patience though with this particular restaking protocol. It's kind of taken too long. I think you were getting a little bit frustrated as well. How are you feeling about that one in particular now? And then also this general idea when it comes to restaking protocols, or just like other L2s, where it's like there's just so many now. Are you still in the idea of like the winners will win, whichever the leaders are winning, or are you still on the lookout for some of these, for some other ones that are potentially newer and still have potential?
Yeah, I mean, we're far enough along that I think the leaders are established, right? Like EtherFi is the big dog. They've already had two successful drops. They have two additional products on top of the LRT stuff. They have like they're executing, right, and they're leading into EVL. It's recouped after the initial drop, so they've reestablished themselves as a leader after I think Renzo stepped in there a little bit. So I'm confident that they're the ones that are going to be leading. So if I do have ETH that I want to be productive with, it'll likely be with them. So I can do the simultaneous either eigenlayer or synthetics, or not synthetics, but symbiotics, the one that Lido dropped, right? So or Karak or whatever. So if I do try to have passive but productive ETH, it'll likely be in some combination of EtherFi, eigenlayer, or symbiotic, just to let it do its thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very helpful summary. I actually put out a video. Well, I did a segment on this last week, and I put out a video on why I thought Symbiotic was one of those examples where it's worth transitioning into for two reasons. One, it's backed by very, very strong people. And like, fair enough, Eigenlayer is the leader in that field, and usually leaders lead, and that's what you'd want to back. But they're backed by the Lido people and Paradigm. So there's something there. The second reason is a more specific numerical reason, which is um, obviously the more TVL a protocol attracts, the more you're getting diluted when you're earning points. Like the person who has way more
Yeah,
invested
assuming
than
it's
you,
linear, right?
yeah, they're going to be accruing way more points than you way faster. The thing about um, Symbiotic is that at the moment they're so early that they're still capping it every time. So at the moment, I can't remember what the number was when I checked. But last time I checked, it was capped at like 1.6 bill at the moment. That's it. Eigenlayer's at 16 bill or something like that. Which means that the people who are in Symbiotic now, you know, per dollar, you're going to be accruing more of whatever amount of points are available to you. So on a purely numerical basis, like when that cap opens, it really makes sense to me to be in that cap rather than the Eigenlayer one where you've got these humongous whales who, you know, are going to attract the majority of the points. Is that like a fair assessment to you, Brad? What's your thinking?
It's Yeah, so it is fair. So again, that's assuming that the rewards are linear, right? So if it's
Sure.
linear, where they just say for every dollar weighted, like you get a certain amount of points, right? That totally, like that's math. That's math. So yes, you're accurate there. And then on the like, in addition to saying, hey, Symbiotic has a chance to take over Eigenlayer. Yes, Eigenlayer is kind of like the preordained one because it came out first. It's got some Ethereum researchers on the advising them and shit like that, whatever. A thing to remember, like for chances of success, Lido has, if I'm this is top of my head, I think they have like 40 billion in staked ETH, right? And Eigenlayer right now is at like 16. Like again, top of my head numbers, but relative, I think that's about close. So if Lido is to establish a restaking protocol, and if you are to believe that all staked ETH will become restaked ETH, as some people do, I know the EtherFi founder has said that numerous times, then Lido could potentially create a method for people to go staked ETH to Lido restaked ETH, and then at that point, boom, 40 billion. I mean, obviously, they're not going to do that, but you know, Symbiotic overtakes Eigenlayer as the highest TVL restaking protocol, right? So there is a path where they could take over the number one spot simply because of what they have established with staked ETH. So I don't think it's a bad play. So I think on two fronts: one, the likelihood of it taking over the leader in face of the leader's leads is there, and then they have a less people. frankly, people are probably bored. So they have less people going into the actual points farm now. So it's probably advantageous as a per dollar
Love it.
point.
I think that's really helpful thinking. Glad we kind of explained that for the people listening in, kind of doubling down on something we started thinking a couple of weeks ago, I think. Before we get into the major headlines, then one final thing from you on the prediction markets. We've been speaking a lot about them. They're obviously getting much more attention and volume. Again, in the snapshot and later on in the Web3 Roundup, I reported that the Poly market did its first $300 million volume month coming towards the end of this month. So a lot of demand and attention going in its direction. What is your kind of, how have you been using it? How have you been, in what ways do you think it's best to use it? What's your experience been so far?
So I've just been using it in niche areas where I think I have an advantage. Just asymmetric bets, right?
Sure.
So there's some crypto stuff in there, like betting on the fees generated month over month for various protocols. I thought, and like just seeing if the odds are off a little bit, and like predicting airdrops. Like there was one that was like 95% base is going to have an airdrop by like July, and like no, like that was a no, easy no. So I just threw it in for a free 5%. I try to do shorter term bets, so that I can reposition and kind of stay active. Just want to have fun. And then, like I said, I lost the Mog one from Trump. That was like I threw $50 in there. It was 3% odds, so 25 to 1 ish. So
Okay, that's a
50
reasonable bet.
bucks to make like like $4,000 or some shit. So I was like, whatever. If someone gets there and goes lose, asks a question, he just says like offhand Mog or what is Mog, it would have counted. So I was just kind of having fun with that one. But largely it's just, like I just staying aware of it. I stay out of the presidential stuff, even though it has like 97% of all volume on there. And I kind of just watch how things are behaving. I actually, back in March, I was getting really into prediction markets, and I actually talked to my team that I had worked on previous products with. It's like maybe build our own, but the regulatory headwinds were just too crazy that I just opted out of it, especially in America. I kind of wish I would have dove in on it then, but last week, 2 weeks ago, I put out another tweet that was just like, Polymarket's awesome, but it's kind of a victim of when it came to market. There's a lot of technical debt with it because like, it's on Polygon. Yeah, it's like the login's not awesome. It's not an embedded wallet. There's no social elements to it. Like not to the degree that we're used to or have seen in the last few years, like with friend tech and everything else. So it's like if someone comes in and they totally like smooth this over with current tech, then they have a chance to step in. And when I did that, I've had like 15 or so teams reach out to me and like, bro, we're building exactly what you're thinking of to various degrees. Now, like I can't share everything from that, but I've been talking to them, seeing what's going to come to market, and we're going to see a lot of cool shit with this. Like we'll see how much users dive into it, but I think we're going to have like a social our prediction market fall coming.
Interesting. And do you see, is there some type of additional innovation on product, or is it just a case of building out in different places? Because this has been one of the
No, it's
challenges.
not. It's not a copy pasta. It's innovating on some of the things that we've seen, adding in some new features. It's a lot of cool stuff. Some of them have been live for a couple months, and
Nice.
they're all over the place.
Okay, well, that's very, very interesting. As we've said before, like we're going to keep keeping an eye out on the poly market stuff, as well as frankly any prediction market that is doing interesting stuff, because that seems to be one of the categories of product which is achieving like product market fit as we speak. So very, very interested in that side of the market. We'll continue to monitor it. Let's get into the main headline for the day, which is obviously Donald Trump committing to fire Gary Gensler on day one, starting a strategic national stockpile by not selling the US government Bitcoin. He spoke on a pretty historic day. I'm just going to set the scene a little bit. I was actually trying to watch this live on Saturday night, my time, I believe it was. It was I don't know if you saw this, Brett, as well, talking of prediction markets, but in the like run up to him coming out, first he got introduced by I think the CEO of Bitcoin Magazine, and then it was like, oh, he's going to come, and then they just said, no, we're not ready, it's like not going to be here. So then they went went back to the presenters. They were chatting, going around in circles. Like 10 minutes went by, 15 minutes went by, 20 minutes by. It was like taking ages and ages. Then they were like, oh, we're not actually getting delayed by Trump. We're getting delayed by a special guest. Like there's a special guest, he or her, like, we're just waiting for them. And simultaneously, Tyler had been tweeting about Elon's jet flying from Paris earlier in the day on the way to Nashville. Like it was going in that direction. And so this was happening like literally exactly at the same time. And then like the Polymarket bets on Elon doing a speech at Bitcoin Nashville was like going up at the same time, and all because of these tweets from Tyler.
I love it, dude.
And then, so somehow, yeah, they were tracking his jet at the same time. And then it was like getting closer and closer. And I don't know, Trump was delayed by like 40 minutes at this point. So it's got to be him, because this is what they're talking about. In the end, the plane just went right by, and there was a tweet was like, oh well, it's got to turn around pretty soon, otherwise like it's not a thing. And then
That's hilarious.
oddly at the conference, they just completely ignored the fact that they'd said anything about a special guest. Like they just completely moved on, no further reference to the special guest. So I don't know whether, like, was it going to be Elon? Then he was like literally deciding while he was up in the plane whether he was going to drop in or not. I don't know if you
Like
saw. Did
literally
you see
drop
any of
in,
that?
do as your parachute out, some
Yeah.
cool shit. Come in from whatever the fuck, like the see him drop in the middle of a field, like the football games that people parachute down on.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. But look, okay, so that was like one little subplot that was happening, which I thought was kind of interesting. And Tira, I know you might have been there, and Funky's got his hand raised as well. Let me just set up the general headlines for people, and then we'll get around and kind of get some insight on the ground from Tira and Funky for your thoughts. So look, I think it was genuinely a historical thing, and I think some people were even fairly emotional about the weight of what was happening. The fact that the potential next president and a president was speaking on such a big stage at the Bitcoin conference, when in most recent history, all aspects of the government have been so antagonistic with crypto. I'm just going to run through maybe some of the key points as shared by Balaji, who kind of did a bunch of timestamps explaining like the key thoughts if you missed it, and just to recap to get people a good sense of the key talking points. He mentioned, after like just doing a bit of rambling at the beginning, giving some thanks to the various people, he said that he was very impressed how Bitcoin rose from an idea on an anonymous message board to the 9th most valuable asset in the world. He had very strong points to say about where America sits in the world and kind of Bitcoin's role in reversing its decline. He said America is a nation in decline. He was referencing China a lot as well, kind of in contrast to that. He said, we cannot let China dominate Bitcoin. The US must lead in tech, science, manufacturing, AI, space, and power generation. And obviously Bitcoin is a part of that. The point being, can't let China or any other country be ahead in something this valuable. He said, again, Bitcoin will be mined, minted, and made in the USA. If it goes to, he did reference a few times it going to the moon. He wasn't literally saying Bitcoin will go to the moon, but very much suggesting that, look, this is an asset which is going up. If it's going to go to the moon, it will get there from America. He emphasized the Biden-Harris administration waging war on crypto. He kind of wanted to put forward that the previous administration has been against Bitcoin and things like that. In terms of what he committed, there were some strong commitments. Trump committed to immediately shutting down Operation Choke Point 2.0 and creating a Bitcoin and crypto presidential advisory council, so that within 100 days, fair rules were written by people who want crypto to thrive. And just before people, I'm going to pause there for a second, before people say in the comments, why are people taking everything that he says at face value? Look, that's like an ongoing thing. It's your right to be skeptical, right to be like not completely trusting of politicians, but we're just reporting on what was said. We're not going to report on it and then say, oh, he's never going to do this or whatever. We're just saying what was put out there so that we can discuss it. He said there'll never be a CBDC. He'll defend the right to self-custody, which is pretty important. He'll support stablecoins and global savings in Bitcoin. Some other key points. He wants to make the US the lowest cost energy producer in the world. So this link between Bitcoin and energy is one that I'm becoming increasingly aware of too, the one that I'm learning more about as well. and how energy is just so important, not just for Bitcoin, but also just in general for the world as we move forward. He then said the US government has violated the cardinal rule, which is never sell your Bitcoin. He will stop the US government from selling its Bitcoin. This will serve as the core of the strategic national Bitcoin stockpile. So that got a pretty big cheer, as did his commitment to commute the life sentence of Ross Ulbricht, who was the founder of Silk Road, the Bitcoin marketplace. And he's been in jail for quite some time now. Nothing got a bigger roar, though, was than him committing to fire Gary Gensler on day one. It got such a big roar that he was completely taken aback, like visibly taken aback. And he said that he was going to say it again because he wanted to hear.
Yeah, you know he loves that. Yeah.
He absolutely loved it. But it was funny how you could visibly see him so surprised at how popular what he was saying was. And so he was like, yeah, I'm gonna dwell on that. I'm gonna double down on that one more time. So in conclusion, committed, well, this is what his position was. He wants to become the pro-innovation, pro-Bitcoin, and pro-tech president. Yeah, he wants to make Bitcoin stronger, richer, freer. There was a funny comment at the end where he said, enjoy, what did he say? Enjoy your Bitcoin, your crypto, and whatever else you're playing with. I don't know if 100% he knows what we're all up to online all the time, but it was a playful end to some degree. So look, that is my conclusion from watching it live, as well as using Balaji's notes. As I said, be skeptical of all politicians on both sides. I'm not saying that he's going to be able to come through and do all of those things, but that is what happened on a fairly historical day of the former president speaking at the Bitcoin conference over the weekend. So, Brett, I'll go to you first. Then I know, Tiro, you're on the ground. Can't wait to hear your perspective, and Funky as well. Any key reflections on this type of talk delivered by Trump?
Okay, so a few things. One, you mentioning the energy thing. That was one of actually the key things that unlocked my head with Bitcoin specifically, at least with proof of work networks, right? Because energy and energy surplus is kind of ephemeral. Right? You admit it, like if you make use of it, it just goes away, right? If you capture a bunch of sun for 3 hours, whatever, and you can only use 10% of it, sorry, 90% is gone. Bitcoin is if you do offload that to Bitcoin mining, right, that power, then you are preserving the energy in the form of currency. In that way, right? If you mine a Bitcoin in that time, you have $60,000, $70,000 worth of something, and then later on you can sell that. So it's almost like storing energy that would typically be blown off. So that was the one thing that really resonated me with Bitcoin. And then seeing all this shit kind of extends the ETH has man hours thing, but more towards Bitcoin, where Bitcoin has mind share, and I guess we can call it network effects, whatever. It's just that regardless of anyone's personal beliefs of this shit, I mean, this is in conjunction with this Cynthia Loomis stuff and everything else. It's just like Bitcoin has the mind share of everyone, and it's kind of the first asset in the cryptocurrency area that everyone thinks to go to, contribute to, do whatever. I think it's all net bullish short term. I tweeted a little bit about it this weekend. I'm actually, I have my concerns with Bitcoin long term for a lot of reasons, mostly the security budget and just not generating enough fees to be a sustainable network. I think that's going to be a big headwind. And I think long term, all of this stuff might even be net bearish for Bitcoin, because if you have all of these nation states and all of these institutions buying Bitcoin, they're not going to be using the fucking protocol. They're just going to be sitting on their stuff because they think it's a buy and hold gold asset. So now you have even less active participants in the ecosystem because it's being gobbled up by these whatever. I mean, this is a 8 to 10 year thing, so not a now thing, but really bullish short term. Clarity, Gary Gensler gone, all that stuff would be good if that actually took place. Still skeptical long term, but it's undoubtedly like the mind share is palpable.
I think that's a really thoughtful point. I actually saw some response to that online, but maybe I'll leave that for a second. It's just good to be able to express, like, different timeframes on how our view might change within different time horizons. Let's go around here a little bit. Tiro, I know you're on the ground. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What was it like in the room? Were you in the room? What was it like in the room? What was your experience of the talk?
Morning, guys. Yeah, Bitcoin Nashville is crazy. It was amazing. There were 9,000 plus people in the room to watch Trump speak, which is pretty crazy. There were over 20,000 people that attended the event. So you could see that all ranges of people were there, from your mom that just bought Bitcoin, that bought a hat and is excited to be a part of the movement, to the hardcore maxi that's talking about ordinals and talking about how Bitcoin's going to take over the world. So a couple things. Trump, I was there. I actually walked out of the Trump speech. I'm not a Trump fan. I'm pretty forthright in that. I did listen back on at 2x speed. And he said a lot of things. He loves to speak. I've watched many other of his events where he likes to play the greatest hits to the crowd. So he plays to the crowd. The Bitcoin conference people were offered him one Bitcoin on a coin. Hopefully he can still remember the keys. The greatest thing would be to see if he could actually figure out how to sell the Bitcoin, because he probably needs the money. That's a whole nother thing. But
let's keep it on the conference, too.
Yeah, you got it. He was really talking about the Federal Reserve and getting rid of Gensler, and he was playing into it. He could see the reaction, but you could see that he didn't know what exactly he was saying. There was a small disconnect there. That's why when he said things, he didn't get the response back that he was needing.
I think to your point, there was actually one point in time which I think the crowd definitely didn't react to. This is not mentioned in here, but he was talking about the varying gains that Bitcoin experienced during each people's presidency, and he was kind of saying, "Oh, when under the Obama administration, this was the amount of gains Bitcoin had, and like under my administration, it was this amount." And I can't remember the number. You need to go back and check, but it was like definitely not the number. Like it was just like a completely random number that sounded completely absurd. Tira, do you remember the number?
I don't remember the number, but I know what you're referencing, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. So like, it's got.
That was pretty funny because it was like the crowd like wanted to, obviously, like they were waiting for these big.
They want to do it.
They wanted to say something,
to
like react in a positive way, I guess, because they want him to pump their bags. But then he was saying numbers that just like were completely not accurate.
So like he just needs plans of action to be able to, like, you could say all these great things, but if you don't have actual plans to be able to do it,
sure.
I'm going to reference one other thing. I watched another thing he was in, and he was in Minnesota talking to Christians, and he said he was going to create a Christian federal task force. So take that as you will with what he's saying about Bitcoin, if he's doing something like that, because that doesn't go against God's.
As we said, always reasonable to be healthily skeptical of every politician and what they are promising. So appreciate your thoughts from on the ground, Tiro. Always good to hear what's happening there. Then Funky, our resident US correspondent, Bitcoin Maxi. I'm very intrigued to hear, Funky, how was your reading of the speech? How did it sit with you after you heard it in its totality, as well as the other stuff about the kind of strategic Bitcoin reserve?
GM, everybody. So the number you're looking for was 800 some odd dollars. And what Trump was referencing is the day that he was inaugurated into office, which would have been January 20th, 2017, the beginning of the run. So then he claims that during his time in office, he's responsible for those gains when it went to the all-time high. And so it was like a whatever kind of insane number. But that's what he was laying credit for. I think the speech overall was very good. It was evidently written by people who are doing Bitcoin policy. I know David Bailey and his team have been ones who are behind it. You and I were laughing sort of in between some of the moments in the speech. It's like when he got off track and just started being Trump, it was like he was still kind of just, as Tiro said, playing some of his greatest hits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the parts that were very explicitly focused on Bitcoin, I was very happy to hear, even if he's just being a mouthpiece for them. I said, I'm a lifelong NPA. I don't think I could ever, no matter how pragmatic it would be for me to vote for Trump personally, I can't do it. So I think I'm literally going to write in Michael Saylor as the US president, because after watching that keynote, And even BBF was like, we should hold nothing but Bitcoin. She is the real Bitcoin Maxi, my wife.
Yeah.
And she was just like watching that in the background, and just the entire time she was commenting about, why do we hold XYZ altcoin? We should have had more Bitcoin if we had been buying these altcoins. So really good. I enjoyed it a lot. I just wanted to read something really quick because I feel this is indicative. You know, David, my friend David, he's a former Goldman Sachs big TradFi guy, and this is the exact quote from the Kingdom. He says, I have to say, from being here at Bitcoin Nashville, I have never experienced anything like this. I've been going to conferences since 2017, and the fact that we are now having conversations about the United States buying Bitcoin, and I'm hearing other countries are about to follow, is the most insane thing to witness. This asset class is going to change the world. We are all in the right place. And I feel like I don't probably need to say anything more than that. I think it was very bullish. I'm sure a lot of people are excited. I'm really excited for the second half of the year. I think the presidential election is going to bring a lot of momentum and a lot of interesting dialogue around these things. And if sovereign nations do kind of start piling in, as Brad was noting, game over. Yeah, this could be. And I think too, and I know Brad's not a believer in this, but I've heard a lot of very bullish talk about the Bitcoin L2 scene, BitVM, OpCat, all that kind of stuff, and the technological progress that's being made on that front. So maybe some of these issues will be ironed out in the long run with the typical UX problems that we have when you think about the mainnet, ordinals and what have you. But I think just the general sentiment was incredibly bullish after that. I mean, it was probably 10x of what we were feeling at ETH Denver when it felt like it was Bitcoin Denver. So yeah, really, really interesting stuff.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that additional context, Funky. Always helpful. And as you say, it was fun to go back and forth with you as we were kind of experiencing that live. To your point, you sent me the Saylor talk. I know people were very much focused on the Trump talk, but I watched the Saylor talk this morning while I was drafting the snapshot, when I kind of draft and research and write the news every morning. And I actually had to pause it at one point because I was like, no, I need to fully concentrate on this. Like, I was working at the same time. I was like, no, this is really good. Maybe just because it was so unbelievably bullish. And so I was like, I want to fully,
Taylor's good at that.
I want to fully take in this bullishness. So if you do want to listen to, or just to understand the bear, base, and bull case that Saylor has kind of come up with, and specifically through the lens of thinking like, look, if you're an individual, what would be your options? He kind of does it from three perspectives. Like, if you're an individual, gives an example of maybe a typical crypto investor, what they might do in each scenario, how it would play out for a typical investor, how a corporation might like to behave in this new environment, and then nation states, like how they might want to approach their investing, and kind of breaks down some different options. Just as well as the thing that he does quite well, and I think he's made some historical calls as well on stocks and Apple and things like that, where he's been quite smart. He kind of goes back into history as well, and talking about how, I don't know, when the Dutch acquired New York, and when different people acquired like different things. Like, there's always these moments in time where certain things is the new thing, and it's just not valued by the people who have it at the time, and it's not valued by everyone else at the moment, but a few people kind of see that value. And explaining how Bitcoin fits into that bigger picture is well, that's the thesis, right? That's the thesis that we're probably all here for. But I think he explains it in a way that maybe we don't do on a routine basis. So that, I think, is very, very interesting. Brad, give you a chance to have any reflections on that before I kind of want to get into the bill proposed by Senator Loomis. If you've got any more reflections, otherwise we can go straight in.
Yeah. Just doubling down on the gravity of, like, if the scale of buyers is nation states, and you have that little game theory of like everyone wants to acquire as much as possible to front run the other nation, and when you have that much power, like, it's obviously ridiculous. And Funky just alluded to like some of my skepticism of L2s and stuff. Like, even so, this is that 8 to 10 year like cautionary tale for me is regardless of what we all think is the thing with all of this, like, value wise, you could have nation states buying all this shit. These are living systems, and like that's where my like caution is with this is they need to be used in order for them to proliferate, right? It's like security of the thing is necessary. It has to be used. So we can all say this thing is worth 100 gajillion gadillion dollars, which kind of helps because it offsets some of the security woes. But unless it's used, then it will not be able to proliferate indefinitely, especially if it has a fixed supply. Like that's a very real issue here. No one has ever given me a good answer. It's always hand waved away. Is like, oh, eventually subsidy will go to zero, but don't worry, fees will offset it. But they've never offset it, and now the largest buyers are going to be inactive holders that won't offset it. And Ethereum is right now, it has the exact same roadmap as Ethereum, right? With L2s is the scaling method. Well, Ethereum is going through a very real transition of users from the L1 to the L2. And in that chasm that it's currently facing, again, Ethereum is already there. No one's using the mainnet, right? It's ways down to like fucking 2 for some days. It's crazy. And it can offset that because it can pay the people that are validating the network in emissions in Ethereum that's generated. But if that same thing happens with Bitcoin, there is no emissions if subsidy goes to zero, right? So then you're not getting fees, you're not emitting anything, which means miners exit the network, which means people can enter it and attack it potentially. And that's the value of Bitcoin is, again, crazy high, which it might be for a little bit. Anyways, that's just some of my skepticism. It's just like, yeah, we need to make sure that stuff gets used. And even if it's used, we need to make sure that like, yeah, it's generating fees. Yeah, I don't know. So that's my position there. I am optimistic of like Opcat coming live and it becoming programmable. I think it absolutely has to do that. But then you start getting into like, well, it loses the narrative of having a hard cap. If like you potentially remove that, then yeah.
Yeah, look, I think it's helpful to have that skepticism. The thing I was reading earlier today, actually, to I think it was in response to that point that you're making, is that the thesis would be that, yeah, fees won't cover it themselves, but maybe nations would start to subsidize it in some way because they see that it's valuable. Would that be a reasonable
I
outcome?
mean, subsidize it in the fact they start paying miners to stay in the network or like start mining themselves. I guess that's kind of what they're saying. Like, oh, if
Yeah.
we don't contribute our own miners to this thing at a loss because we're not getting paid from the actual block rewards, then it risks jeopardy. So, like, yes, you would have financial incentives for people to run miners at a loss at some point, if that is the case. So, that is a potential outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Good to hear the kind of other side in some ways. But as I said, I really want to get into just some of the details of this strategic reserve concept. This tweet shared by McKenna, who I think is quite a prominent trader at the time, and said, "This is literally the end game and cements the Bitcoin standard for the next century if passed. Your strategic Bitcoin reserve would target 5% of the total Bitcoin supply, which is 4x the current 212k Bitcoin confiscated holdings." One point about the holdings at the moment is that I believe a proportion of them is actually like people's money because it was confiscated from an exchange that probably needs to go back to people themselves. So it's not literally all 200 for the US government. But just to kind of break down Senator Loomis's proposal, which was kind of described as a revolutionary proposal to supercharge the US dollar by establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve to fortify the dollar against rising inflation. The four aspects of legislation would establish a decentralized network of secure Bitcoin vaults operated by the Treasury with statutory requirements ensuring the highest level of physical and cybersecurity. Implement a 1 million unit Bitcoin purchase program over a set period of time to acquire a total stake of approximately 5% of total Bitcoin supply, mirroring the size and scope of gold reserves held by the United States. Remember, this was kind of mirrors what RFK said the day before in his speech, where he wants to have the US have it holding as much Bitcoin as it does gold. He said the legislation would be paid for by diversifying existing funds within the Federal Reserve System and Treasury Department, and it would affirm self-custody rights of private Bitcoin holders and emphasize that the strategic Bitcoin reserve shall not infringe upon individual financial freedoms. Brad, do you think that this is the end game as this tweet describes? Like, there's no marginal buyer after that, right? Like this is the final boss.
It's pretty fucking wild. Yeah. Where my mind goes to with this is one, how they like everyone keeps equating it to gold, right? So like they're just everything, like even just the decision to say 5% is because they pegged it to actual gold and the portion that they own there. So they're just trying to match that. So it's kind of funny how humans just continue to do this, because like, yes, I know it's continued to be described as digital gold, and like that's the narrative or whatever, but it's just funny how we continue to proliferate that stuff like throughout everything. And the more it gets interwoven into society, is like it's all better, right? It normalizes it, more people buy. But yes, you're not going to see, I mean, the next marginal buyer is other nation states saying, well, we want 6%, we want 7% or whatever. Like I kind of look at the government's flows periodically, and like you can just see, what's the South American country that's buying it every single day, buys a single Bitcoin every single day. It's a nickel, Bigo, whatever. That's not Venezuela or
the person, I think
yeah,
Kashmir in the comments just said El Salvador, no?
El Salvador. I think, yes, it's El Salvador. Yeah, they buy a single Bitcoin every single day. Like they just DCA permanently. And I think it's funny. So like if we could see that across like 15, 20 different countries, and like they're all just trying to one up each other, like that's the next marginal buyer at that level. And like that's bullish for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty wild. Yeah, I mean, I think I actually saw a tweet earlier when people are wondering. I mean, I think the price moved up immediately because they heard all this stuff, and someone was just reflecting on price action, saying, like, look, the people who are like there ready to buy on moments like that are people who are just like traders trying to get in and immediately. Like a big capital haven't just heard, like, say you're a different government hearing that speech on a Saturday night, you're not going to be ready to deploy your capital on Monday, are you? Like, the capital isn't going to move in. So this person, and look, I don't know which way the price is going to go. As you say, probably short term, medium term bullish, probably long term bullish as well. But if you're expecting that capital to like come in Monday morning on the dot of trading hours because all the governments around the world will have heard the speech on Saturday, it's like, that's just not realistic, I don't think.
If we can establish both of these things, so that both the Bitcoin reserves, and so that's obviously helping the industry, and then I still think the stable coins is proliferating the US dollars across the internet, and like that really strengthens the US from the other side. So both of those two things, that interwoven into the US government is just, yeah, like how much more normalized can an industry be, or an asset class be, whenever like you're at that level.
Yeah, love it. Okay, I think we're going to still be dealing with the implications of this from here on out. So we'll keep on top of it, especially these ideas of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. But I want to get into the meme coin stuff. We've only got about 6 minutes left for today's show, but let's hit the Web3 roundup before we get into that from the snapshot, which is pinned up top as always. So starting with number one, Compound Finance was attacked for $24 million via a DAO governance vote. Remember, these DAOs, sometimes if you're not alive and your voters are not awake, sometimes things can get pushed through without, that is not helpful to the bigger groups. We've got to stay alive to that. Number two, Hong Kong lawmaker considers Bitcoin as strategic reserve. I wonder how many times we're going to see that kind of headline from different regions around the world come out in the next few days and weeks. University of Wyoming launches a Bitcoin Research Institute. And final one from the political front, Kamala Harris seeks to reset relations with the crypto community as odds close between herself and Trump. I do think, well, it's not as definitive as it was when it was Trump versus Biden. And let's see how this outreach to the crypto community goes. On the more creative side, Xcopy releases 2 new damage control editions, bringing the series to 7 editions, showing that on screen for people who are fans of Xcopy work. And finally, as we mentioned, Polymarket does its first $300 million volume month, which is pretty significant. Look, there was this big drama on the meme coin side of things. In fact, 2 things I'm going to say. In terms of the news, this NEIRO coin, or various NEIRO coins, did $1 billion worth of volume over the weekend, which is insane, right? That's an insane amount of volume. There was the drama, which was first there was one coin, then someone else created a copycat coin. Now I think there's 3 or 4 NEIRO coins, literally all trying to be the main NEIRO coin because it's the new dog from the former, well, the real owners of the former Doge dog now have this new dog called NEIRO. And this is the one that everyone wants to pump, but no one can just be happy with one coin to pump because everyone wants to be in early. Because this coin went from like 0 to 80 million or 60, 70 million, like really quickly within a day. it was less than that on the weekend. So that happened. More on a personal side, and I just wanted to check in with you to see where your thoughts are on this, Brad. I made a decision, I think on Friday or Saturday, just reflecting on my own personal interactions with meme coins. I know I've spoken a little bit about how various people sometimes look down on them as a kind of, NFTs were this glorious artistic pursuit, and you could kind of collect, and they were non-fungible, and people kind of convinced themselves that there was a real collectability. And I think still there absolutely is in certain circumstances. But when meme coins came along, it was like, I don't know, this is too degenerate maybe for what the previous collectors had grown accustomed to. And I started to try to think in my mental model. I was like, just think of meme coin launches as NFT launches. Like, there would be multiple times back in NFT land where you'd mint a project and then you'd have to wait for them to reveal, right? But everyone was still listing them before they knew what the coin was or how they would perform. So in a sense, it's not entirely different. Like, you're just buying what
the moment was for me? The moment was 2 months ago. I put out a tweet that was like, if you don't think meme coins are the cycles NFTs, and it was after listening to a space, I think it was Tyler was doing it with the Real Housewives lady who did the cat coin or whatever. And she came on there and they were talking about like, oh, I'm doing it for the right reasons. We're going to donate some of this and like all these future utility things I'm going to do. And like all this, I was like, this is NFTs. This is the exact same shit.
What we're saying, yeah.
What we're saying for every NFT thing back in the day. I was like, these are just this cycle's NFT launches. Like, if you don't have the tools in place to like get in early on the launch and like know what's going on, it's same shit, different tool set. It's identical to me. It's this cycle's NFTs.
Which, once you come to that conclusion, which to be fair is not like I don't think it's a brainwave conclusion, right? Like, well, maybe it is, because some people are so wedded to the idea of NFTs and what they do. And to be fair, I think two things. One, I think that, look, the NFT market is a legit maturing market that has attracted loads of capital and that is locked up in NFTs. That's legit. It's not going anywhere. I don't think those NFTs are going to zero. And I think that they're
established as an asset. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just established as a potentially very expensive even asset class. So I think that exists, and that collectability, the ERC 721s are like, they stand alone and they can do a specific thing. However, once you kind of realize in terms of the trading behavior, that all of that liquidity that created the bubble for NFTs, because it was a bubble, right? Fine, they're a legit asset class now, but that period of time was a bubble. That bubble is now not in NFTs. They're just like maybe appropriately priced. They're down compared to what they were, but they're appropriately priced. Some of them are still damn expensive, so appropriately expensively priced. But that liquidity that created the bubble is now in meme coins. And then I just thinking like, I'm not participating even close enough to where I was before. And it kind of doesn't
You're not chasing launches. You're not, yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I was like, it's not right. There's got to be a proportion. Just like I was risk managing before. So it's like, it's not right that I'm not participating in any way. So I started participating this weekend. I bought the top of NEIRO. You'll all be delighted to hear. And then I bought another one as well. So I'm like, I took 10 Sol, I put it in a separate wallet. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be way more clued up on this, because, as if I shouldn't have realized already, like, this is where the hyper liquidity is. So that's what I'm gonna be looking at. Thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, I have a little trading bag. I do the same. I think I dabbled in the Politify stuff. I have, the majors like WIF and whatever else. So like, yeah, I'm trying to stay apprised, but like it comes in waves. Like frankly, it burns me out to do too much. So I'll pay attention for a few weeks, kind of dip out, and obviously the things that I buy in those 2 weeks mostly go to zero. And then like, because I don't pay attention to it, it's just like you always have to be on, it's pretty taxing, frankly, for someone like me. So I do it with a very small portion of my bag. One thing that I'm thinking of especially with this NEIRO drama, and it's just a product idea for anyone in the space. What do you guys think about I tweeted at Imran with a Defiance a long time ago, because I think like tickers are going to become like the new like ENS style thing.
Oh,
like
that's a good idea.
Well, it's just like tickers are so valuable, right? To like have the one, because like you have three NEIROs, right? Like, but like, how do you know which one is the one that's like the one outside of like just seeing numbers, which can kind of be a little deceptive, right? Because you can have people pumping numbers doing whatever. So I was thinking like if someone could do a ticker registry and have a platform where you can like socially sign in, right? You sign in with your Twitter, it spins up a
That's
wall
a
in the
great
background,
idea.
and you can signal which of the ticker contracts is the one that you denote is the one, right? It is the one that is the rightful owner. So then you don't have to have capital involved in it, which is fine. So you have the money side of it, but then you have like the social side. It's almost like the optimism governance house, where you have the governance side and then the money side. So the money might be in one, but if you have like Ansem, B Check, Legendary, Funky, T-Row, everyone, all these guys are like socially signaling that this other NEIRO is the one, then it creates this like interesting dynamic of whatever. Now, how to monetize that, I don't know. I'm still thinking on that, but someone needs to start working on it.
That is a very interesting concept, and I think that it's become clear that something like that, as you say, is not entirely clear how it would work in practice, but there's like 5 of these tickers now. And yeah, as you say, you go through the market caps, it's like, well, is the biggest one the real one? Not necessarily. What does it even mean to be the real one? Is first
Would it
real?
change your buying? Would it change your buying habits if you saw that like Kobe signed off on one of the tickers? He doesn't have own any of it, but he said this is the one that I respect.
Of
Yeah,
course. I think that actually happened with this one. Path
handsome. Yeah, right.
replied,
Oh,
well,
Pat did it too.
Ansem said one, and then I think Path said it. I don't know if Path said the same one or a different one.
Yeah, then you have those games, right? It's like, oh, this is Anthem's coin, this is Pat's coin, and like it's not like lost to the Twitter timeline. It's like an actual registry on a site. Everyone can go and look and see active people, and then you can even. I thought about monetizing. You have the teams that say, okay, I want to get Path, B Check, Bread to sign up on us. So because I have a wallet tied to their social handle, I'll give them a little bit. Send it over to them as like, if you guys vote for us, here's X amount, and like whatever. You can see it because it's tied to their social. You can see they were given before the vote or after the vote or whatever.
Interesting. That is fascinating. Look, we're going to definitely keep on top of this way more. I am committed to the trenches now before we get into up only season. So that's where we're at. Hope that was an enjoyable show. Loads of important stuff coming out of the weekend. We will be with you all the way Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. BST. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We're basically everywhere. Like us, subscribe to us. And thanks so much for joining us. Take care. Have a great show. Thanks so much to Bread, my legendary co-host. Thanks, T-Row and Funky, up on stage with us. Have a great day. We will be back with you tomorrow. See you. Bye-bye.